everybody. Welcome to the Horse Barn Management Show. Monday night, 6:30 Central Time. Hop on in if you see that we're live. Tell us where you're from. My name is Sherry Grunska, and this show is put on by Pro Barn Management and myself. That was kind of a little tongue-tied there. Anyways, welcome to the show. This is where we talk about real barn management, every part of it about running a horse business, and great conversation. We get absolutely great questions from people all over. So tonight I have some topics I want to talk about. I've also had some questions come in. And if you have a question, go ahead and type it on in. Trisha's here. Say hi, Trish. See your hand? Yep, that's her. Trish is always here every Monday helping me. I couldn't do this without her. Last week was kind of crazy. We tried to go live with a guest. We had Debbie Treadwell, which is, she's an equine insurance specialist. And it took like 30 minutes, and we never did quite get it right, so I really want to apologize. But if you go back on probarnmanagement.com, you can watch the whole interview with her. If you're not sure what type of insurance to get for your business, contact her. Her website is buyhorseinsurance.com. Debbie Treadwell, and she knows so much, and she answered so many great questions. And I even learned some things that I didn't know before, and I've been doing this a long time. And I was like, oh, I need to check into that. So if you didn't see last Monday night's show, go back and watch it with her. It'll really help you if you're wondering where to get insurance or what type of insurance to get, depending on if you're a barn owner, a manager, a horse trainer, leasing, whatever you're doing. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put them on in. Okay, first of all, is it okay to do this, Trish? I have an announcement.
Yeah.
Yes, I got to celebrate, guys. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to boast just a little bit. My book went #1, yay, on 3 equine categories for Amazon. And Connie Stoney does my website and Stoney's Web Designs, and she did this phenomenal book cover, but I had her put that on #1 and used in equine college programs across the country. And so I'm so excited. It went #1 a few months ago, but the fact that I had 3 of them yesterday just blew my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, people are buying it. So anyways, if you're looking for a book, if you're going to start a horse business, check out my book. I guarantee you it's going to open your eyes to things that you've never even thought about. And I want you to be financially fit and successful in your horse boarding business. So I was kind of excited about that. That was a big thing. I've never had anything like that. So I'm going to celebrate a little bit. Okay, I want to tell you 1 month from now, on June 12th and 13th, we have our 2-day barn management workshop right here. If you're kind of on the fence on if you want to come to it or not, I'm just going to try to encourage you to come to it. It'll be well worth your money. If you go on my Facebook page or probarnmanagement.com, the flyers are on there. It tells you the cost and kind of what to expect if you're building, if you're buying a place, if you're already owning a place and you're running into trouble. We are going to open your eyes and talk about all of it here at our place. And if you're thinking of boarding horses down the road, this is a great workshop to go to, because we're going to talk about the financial part of it, herd management, the equipment, client issues, revenue versus cost. You know, how do you figure out your board prices? How do you figure out what to do if you're losing money? You know, how do you want to do your herds? All of it. I guarantee you 2 days, and we talk the entire time. There's not even enough time. It just goes so fast. But we still have some openings, and we'd love to have you for 2 days. We'll feed you really good. You'll get a copy of my book that I just showed you, a step-by-step guide to boarding horses, and we're going to feed you really good. And you're going to go home with so much material besides the book that the idea is to set you up for a really strong foundation in your business, and to help you get your business, if you're in it already, get it organized. And I have some really great strategies for doing that I have found to work so good at our barn. And we have right now about 38 horses, and it works really good. So I want to share those with you and help make your job easier. Okay. Trish, let me know if any questions pop in.
Will do.
And okay, so I kind of wanted to talk about a topic tonight that I don't know if I've even talked about over the last few months, but it's kind of important because we're going into clinic season, and we actually have a clinic coming this Saturday, and it's an obstacle clinic. And I have a lot of people tell me, how do you set up a clinic? How do you make money at it? What's the easiest way to do it? Almost everybody I know that has set up clinics at their barn, the first few times they've done it, they've lost money, or they found out it was much more work than they were thinking it would be. Things didn't go right, and so I kind of want to walk that through with you. I want to kind of share some of the things I've learned. And it all started for me. My very first clinic here, a trainer had approached me. This was like 15 years ago. And she had approached me and said she'd like to have a dressage clinic at our barn. And we have a pretty big arena. It's 80 by 200. And I was super excited. And I said, yes, let's do it. It was going to be a big name. She was, at the time, this trainer was flying in from Florida. And she was an O judge for the Olympics. And so, of course, I thought that was like a huge deal. And I let this trainer organize all of it because I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what prices to set. I didn't even know how to figure out my prices. My stalls were being used, and at the end of that 2 days with this with the trainer that flew in, and then the trainer that had set it all up, I ended up losing money. I had stalls to clean all over the place. My barn was a disaster. It turned out to be kind of a bummer for me as the barn owner. I never made a penny. So, and when I say I didn't make a penny, I made money, but I didn't make what I should have made for what the time it took me. And in some ways, I feel like I kind of lost money. So I want to talk about that. And the first thing I always tell people when they want to have clinics is, if you've never done one, I would probably encourage you to start off smaller and do something a little simpler than what I did. I dove into something really big, and I learned from that experience. I don't let other people set up my clinics for me anymore. I do it all. I want to be in control of it. And you have to remember that you're the one that has the facility. You're the one that owns the place. So they are coming and they're working out of your barn, and they're making a lot of money out of your stable. So you should be compensated for that. The other thing you need to think about is you're going to have, if you're going to have the public at your place, you want to check with your insurance. You might have to have extra insurance for the clinic. So I get extra insurance for the clinic because I know the public's going to be coming in. There's going to be a lot more people, and I want to make sure I have the correct coverage. It's easy to do, but anyways, what I want to, people will ask me, how do you set up a clinic and so that you're not losing money? So what I do is when I see someone, I'm thinking, oh, that'd be fun to have them come here, whatever the clinic is, I will contact them, and they will either do one of a couple things. They'll either tell me the price they need for that day to come, and they'll tell me the number of participants, whether it's a riding clinic, an in-hand clinic, whatever it is. They'll tell me what they need to get per day in order for them to come. Now, if they're local, it probably won't be as expensive. If they're coming from another state, it's going to be much more expensive, and there's other costs involved. If it's a 2-day clinic or a 3-day clinic, there's probably going to be a hotel involved in it, and all these expenses someone has to pay for, and it shouldn't come out of your pocket. So you need to find out some questions, and normally what I have found most common is the clinician who's coming will say, I need to make this much a day, and I want my lunch food included, and I want the hotel included. And so you figure out that total price, and then you have to divide it out by all the participants, and then you have to add on the price that you need to make, and like cost of your insurance. If you have a bathroom, they're going to be using the bathroom, they're going to be using toilet paper, all these things are going to be used. So you want to make sure you get all these things in line and you ask the right questions, because it's really a bummer to have a clinic like that, and at the end of it, you've done all these hours and hours of work and you've made no money. You come with $25. So I want you to do it right. If they're going to rent stalls, if you have people hauling in and they're going to rent your stalls, you have to decide, are you going to supply shavings? If not, they have to bring their own shavings. For the clinic we're having Saturday, we have a couple stalls that are going to be used, and I told them they'd have to bring their own shavings, and I told them the price I needed to get. And it's going to differ wherever you live across the United States or across the world, depending on what the going rate is to rent a stall. But I think a lot of times people go too low because they're worried they can't get people. And there's a lot of work that goes into putting on a clinic. I bought a new sound system a couple of years ago. Well, that costs money, and that I need to pay off, through these clinics. It has to pay for itself. So all those things you want to think about. The thing about clinics is, too, you want to, if you're not sure what to do, I think sometimes people get stuck in this mode of having like maybe one type of clinic for the type of barn that you're going to have. If I could tell you anything right now, go out on a limb and do something completely opposite of what you've ever done. Have some really fun clinics. We did, one of the funnest clinics we ever had was a guy that came here with his horse, and it was how to teach horses tricks. And it was a full clinic. We had a lot of auditors, and he was teaching people how to, teach your horse how to bow, how to do all this other stuff, how to fetch stuff. It was a really super fun clinic. Plus, it taught a lot of groundwork for your horse. And that's what I'm excited about the obstacle clinic we're having this weekend, is because it's different. They're going to have a lot of obstacles that these horses have never seen before, that the clinician's bringing in. And it keeps the horse's mind working. So go ahead and try something completely different, and have fun with clinics. I think clinics are a great way to advertise your barn. If you're trying to get people to board at your stable and you're trying to make a name for yourself, one of the best ways you can do it is to have a clinic, because you're going to have all kinds of people coming in and they're going to be checking out your place, and they may have never been there. And I guarantee you, if they like it, they'll call you and they'll say, hey, I was at a clinic. Do you have any openings? Can I have a tour? It's a great advertising tool. Okay. So if you have any questions about clinics, give me a call. Oh, you can't give me a call.
Type it in.
Type it in. Do not call me. I think I did that before. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm going to jump in. I had some questions this week, and I'm going to talk a little bit about them, and I'm going to share, for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm just going to, before I answer this first question, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, because if you're wondering who I am and why I'm talking about this stuff, and even wondering what gives me the authority to talk about this stuff, I'm going to explain. My husband and I built our barn in 2005, and it holds 27 horses, and it has an 80 by 200 arena. It has attached hay and grain and bedding area. It has 2 tack rooms, a wash stall, grooming bays, and a lounge. And when we built, I thought it was going to be really easy, and I thought we were going to make lots of money. I didn't realize all the overhead. I mean, I had an idea, but I really didn't have an idea of all the expenses and all the overhead. And the biggest mistake I made from everything was I had our board prices way too low, and our expenses were way too high, and we were just losing money left and right. And that was right out of the gate after a few months. I knew we were in bad shape. And we were a brand new business with a beautiful barn. And it was really hard. So I guess what happened down the road is that we started correcting the situation, getting our finances under control, and I started changing things. I realized there were no books out there that talked about this real life stuff and how to get your business going right in the right direction, how to make it financially fit, how to streamline your chores and all that. And so I started writing books, and that's how I fell into this. So what I try to do now is teach people to make their business so much easier, to get their money under control, to get their chores under control, learn how to navigate services, clients, and all that. And it takes sometimes, it can take a couple of years to figure it out. It took me like 5 years to figure it out, and I didn't have anyone to go to, so I was kind of, 3 steps forward, a step back, making mistakes and learning from them. And so I'm trying to get it so that you don't go through all those mistakes that I made through. And so that's why I wanted to talk about this first question, because this is always something that people ask me all the time. And the question is, how do I figure out my board rates? Where do I begin? It's a huge question, because where do you begin? And I'm going to tell you right now, I always tell people, don't go around looking at what everyone else's board rates are, because that's what I did. Huge mistake, because what people naturally do is they'll say, oh, that barn over there is $400. Well, I'm going to make mine $375. It'll be lower, and I'm sure, I can get some of those clients or get people to come here because it's lower. Don't do that. It's the wrong way to go about it. I guarantee you're going to regret it, especially if you don't have your finances under control and what your expenses are going to be year-round, especially with the change of seasons. So I always tell people, before you do that, I want you to figure out what your expenses are going to be. And so you need to really, I think the best way to go about it is to do a business plan. And you're going to do it for a 12-month spreadsheet, and you're going to figure out what your expenses are for everything, for heating the water in the winter, for the shavings year-round. You're going to, if you live in a state like we live in Wisconsin, we go through a lot more shavings in the wintertime because the horses are in more. And that all has to be divided out throughout the entire year. And it really can take you a year to figure it out when you go through all the seasons. You're going to have, you're heating your water, so that's going to be more expensive in the wintertime. Your hay, in the wintertime, if it's real cold, you're going to be feeding more hay, and in the summer you could be feeding less hay. And if the horses are on pasture, you're going to be feeding them probably even less if you have a lot of pasture. The other thing you need to think about are some of the financials, like your property taxes, your accountant, your lawyer, and your mortgage is a huge one. Now, my husband and I, we do this full time, and this is our living. And when people say you can't make a living at boarding horses, I tell them they're wrong, because we do make a living at boarding horses. This is our full-time job, and we buy our own medical insurance. We buy our food. We have our house mortgage. We just remodeled our upstairs. That all comes out of our board. And see, the thing is, what people, I think they forget is you need to make a profit. You can't just break even. You have to make a profit because you have to live. You have to live your personal expenses. You have a phone bill. You have car insurance. You're gonna, you deserve a vacation. You should be able to go on vacation. You need to have the money for that. There's a lot of things that you're gonna do throughout the year, just like you would at any other job, and you're going to want to have that money put in a savings account so that you can do that stuff and live just like any other person who goes to work every day, except that you're working at home. And the other thing is, people forget about are things like the fuel. You're going to go through a lot of fuel. They underestimate the cost of hay, and it's important to know how your hay is going to be fed, because that's a huge difference in cost. And what I mean by that is you could be feeding small bales, or you could be feeding the 900-pound square bales where you're peeling them off, and you could be saving money that way. Or you could be feeding free choice round bales, and all that has a different cost involved. So I want you to think about that. So I can't give an easy answer to this question because it's so complex. It does become much simpler, but it is a complex answer. So that's why I tell people to get my book, because I break it all the way down for you and help you to start making a list of what your expenses are all the way up, and then you can set your board rate from there. I would also say to include in there an amount for emergencies, for repairs. And if I was to say one important thing to do, and I hope I'm going to explain this right, if you have 20 stalls and you need to figure out what the board rate is going to be and all your expenses, and once you get all that figured out, even though you have 20 stalls, I want you to divide it out like maybe you only have 18 stalls, because then those other 2 stalls, you're going to take all that money and you're going to put that into a savings account, and you can put it into a retirement. You can put it away. You need to treat this just like a business, just like any other business, and you can't do that if you're losing money, and you need to make a profit, and you can do it. It's just I want to set it up right. So it's not an easy answer. It's kind of complex, and that's why I do these workshops, because we really break it down for you. But that's where you start. If you just go and shoot in the dark and do what everybody does, and I did the same thing, and say, oh, well, that barn over there is 400, and that barn over there is 425, and this barn over here is 390. I'm going to go 375 because I'll be lower. That is you're on your way to having problems. So don't do that. Don't do that. And cheaper isn't always better anyways. So just remember that it's okay to be more expensive than the others. And if you give quality care, you're worth it. Do you have a question,
We have
Trish?
2 clinic-related questions.
Oh, okay. Hold on 1 second.
Okay. Let me know when you want them.
I'm just wondering here, as far as the board rates, I think that's all I'm going to answer on that. The person who sent me this question, if you're watching and you have any more questions about that, go ahead and write it in. But honestly, it would almost be, it would be so good for you if you can't come to the workshop to get the book. I also do consulting one-on-one with people to help them get this part of it moving forward, so that we can get your finances in order, so that you're making money. It doesn't matter if you're boarding 4 horses or 40, you should be making money no matter what. You should never be losing money on having all these horses at your property. I guarantee you the work's going to you're going to have good days and bad days. Some days are going to feel really easy. There's going to be days when it's really hard, and your time is worth money, and what you do is priceless. You're worth it, so you need to make money for what you do every day of the year with those horses, for their care. So don't shortchange yourself, and set it up right. And I think go a little higher. Don't make the price too low because you're worried people can't pay it. If they find out you have quality care, they'll pay it, because it's important. A horse can't thrive if his surroundings are not healthy for him, and that's worth its weight in gold. If you can create a situation where the horses are happy and healthy, they're doing good, they're playing outside, they're getting plenty to eat, that is worth its weight in gold. So don't underestimate yourself or what you do for that. So, okay, go ahead and shoot me a question on the clinics.
Okay. Our arena is 60 by 100.
Mm-hmm.
What size do you think would be a minimum for holding a clinic?
It depends on what the clinic is. You mean people-wise and riders? So 60 by 100 is, it's not that big. So it kind of would depend. If you're a riding clinic, You're not going to have a lot of room. You might have, it depends, you might have to ask the clinician. So we're having this clinic Saturday, and our arena is 80 by 200, but it's an obstacle clinic, so they're not going to be cantering or jumping and using the entire arena. They're going to be using these obstacles. And it's going to be 5 in the morning for a session and 5 in the afternoon for a session. And that obstacle clinic definitely could be in a smaller arena. Now, if you're doing a clinic that you're jumping or you're doing barrel race, you're doing a lot of other stuff, speed events, you need a bigger, you're going to only be able to have like one person in there at a time. So it depends on the type of clinic. If you tell me what type of clinic you're having, and maybe I can give you a few thoughts on that. If you're doing groundwork, in hand, you can have a few more people in there and you'd be fine. And you might have to try it too to see what works. If you're doing something like we did a cart pulling clinic a few years ago where we had someone come in and they were teaching people how to drive horses and ponies. You need a big area because, of all, the carts, they need area, they can't just turn on a dime. They need to be able to turn. So it kind of depends on what kind of clinics you want to have. A lot of clinics, you could get a lot of people in there, but if you're doing a lot of riding, you're not 60 by 100, you're going to not have a lot of room to get a lot of people in there if you're all cantering at the same time. So you might have to limit it. Most of the clinics that we've done through the years, they break it into sessions because obviously you're not going to be on the horse for 8 hours. So the one this Saturday is 9 to 12, so 3 hours of obstacle stuff, and then an hour lunch, and then 1 to 4. And that's a really good break in between. If you're going to have less people, you might do some clinics. You'll have people where the clinician will come in and they'll only do 1 or 2 people at a time, and they'll do them for an hour. So if you're doing hour slots, then that works out good for the size arena you have. So you definitely could do that, and that would be no problem at all. For more riding work, depending if you were going to do English Western dressage, some of that, you'd have more room for that. But and a lot of clinicians like to do that too. We did a couple jump clinics last summer, and it was just, I believe it was just 2 people at a time per hour, and they were jumping and taking turns, and the clinician was talking, and it was 1 hour slots. And so ask the clinician what they want to do, but there's so many options, and you can make it work with that size arena. You can do it. You just wouldn't be able to have 10 horses in there at once. That would obviously be too crowded and not safe for riding, but lots of other stuff. So do you have another one?
Yes.
Okay.
What would you pay someone to run a clinic, an outside professional?
Oh, an outside professional? I don't know, because I've always done it myself. I guess, to be honest with you, I know there's a couple people in the area here that run the dressage clinics up north of us, and they put it all together. They do all that. But with dressage, you have the scribes, you have your ride times. There's so much more involved, and I don't know if they volunteer or if they actually get paid for that. But it's a good question. I don't know what I would pay because I've always done it myself. I think I would check around. If I was getting to the point where I didn't want to do it myself anymore and I was going to have a bunch of clinics, I would probably check with the barns in the area that do have people that run them and ask them how much they charge. I have no idea if you would charge them an hourly rate. The thing about it is putting on clinics is really, it's time consuming. You spend a lot of time setting up things. You might have, so for example, this week I had one person who had signed up for Saturday's clinic and the horse pulled up lame. So she contacted me and she said, can I cancel? Can you fill the spot? And I said, sure, I can fill the spot. So now I've got to switch gears with all that, get hold of this other person, there's a lot of stuff involved in that. And then this morning I had another situation where someone can't come, and they understood that they'd have to pay for the clinic if I couldn't fill it, but I knew I could fill it. So I was taking care, and that all took time to switch all that. And I have the clinic times all set up, and then one person I wasn't sure could be in the morning session because it's a new person coming in, and that means I have to have them switch with someone in the afternoon. Sometimes you're calling people, you're trying to get this all, and so I don't know on that situation how much I would pay someone. I'd probably pay them a flat rate, but I've always just done it myself. It's just easier, and because it's my business, and that's how I get paid. So I can't answer your question on that, but I would check around with other barns that have someone and kind of ask. I know that a lot of barns around our area that do a lot of shows, they're made up of volunteers. They have a lot of volunteers. So there might only be one person getting paid, and the rest of the people that are helping are volunteers. And so it's just something to check out. It depends how big your place is and what you're doing. So I hope that answers. Any more questions on that? Okay. So I had a question here. How many horses will I need okay, it's kind of a blank question here, but how many horses would I need in order to run a business and do it as a full-time living? Ooh. Well, you're not going to be able to do it as a full-time living with 3 horses. Yeah, so you're going to have to I would spend a good year figuring out the numbers. It took us about 9 months to do a business plan to figure out what we could afford to live on. People will ask what we have here, and we're trying to downsize. I keep saying that, we're trying to downsize. We have about 38 horses here. So we bring in enough money that David and I can live. What's it called? A mid-level, what's it called? I don't know. We live just a normal life. I don't even know what I'm saying. When you're not making a lot of money after all the expenses go out.
Middle class.
We're middle class. Thank you. See, I couldn't do this without Trish. I'm a middle class person. It's like we just live a middle class life, just a normal life. But, there's other dividends in that because I get to be at home. I mean, there's a lot of other stuff. If you're living what you want to do and you're living at home, then there's so much more value in it. It's not just about the monetary. But the reality is you have to be able to pay your bills, have insurance, you have to be able to live. And so I can't answer you on that. It depends on where you live in the country. It depends on what your debt is. And that was the problem with us, is we got ourselves into so much debt that the job became much harder because we couldn't hire out like we had planned. And that was a real drag. So that's why you need to set it up right. And if I could say anything, people would say, would you build this big again? If I knew what I know now, I would have built a lot smaller. I also would have been very aware not to get ourselves into such a financial mess at the beginning, and it would have been a lot easier in the long run. So you're really going to have to do a business plan. I guess if you're going to do anything, do a business plan. That's really going to get you to open your eyes to what it's going to look like financially, and also to what kind of barn you want. And employees are huge. People don't realize, there's expenses with employees. You have to have workman's comp, and you have to pay taxes. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that that you're going to have taken out, and that's why it's good to have an accountant. My accountant I have to pay quarterly. And those expenses all get wrapped up, and you need to figure out that all is part of the board, because that's what costs to have you keep the business running. So you need to think about that. The one thing I wanted to talk about, because we are going into spring. It's kind of long here, winter. It's still cold. I keep waiting for it to warm up. But anyways, we're in that time of year for spring cleaning. And a lot of people don't realize, I know I didn't, and David and I were truly, I think, a little bit surprised after winter time and all the snow, how much damage it did to our building. Every year we have to repair stuff. We've had to rent lifts to fix the gutters, because when the snow comes off the roof, it bends all the gutters down, and because our building is so tall, we can't get up there. So we've had to rent a lift. And there's a lot of yearly repairs that I want to talk about in this hour, because I think people forget about those things, and then what happens is they wonder why things start falling apart, or their things start looking tired, and then they don't have the money to fix a lot of the stuff, and they get themselves into a mess. Trish, let me know if you have any questions.
You're good.
So anyways, David and I started spring cleaning, and this is the time of year we do it, and it's always an expense. And people forget about those expenses, and they don't have the money saved for the expenses. So we just had screenings delivered to fill in all the potholes, and to put screenings by all the gates, because the mud and everything just sinks everything down, and the horses are constantly pushing it down, and we have to get all that fixed. Our arenas, we usually have to add sand, not always every year, but for sure every other year. And arena sand is very expensive. So that's another thing that we have to do. People forget about the cleanup. You've got to mow your grass. If you have a lot of acreage, and you have a lot of grass area, and you have an area that maybe where people can ride outside, or you have a jump course outside, that all has to be mowed and maintained, and that means someone has to cut it, whether you hire someone to do it, or you have you can do it yourself, but there's fuel, there's repair on the lawnmower, all that stuff adds up. And if you're gonna board horses as a living, you have to think about all these things, because every spring you're gonna have to get the lawnmower ready to go. There's probably things you're going to have fixed on it. There's fuel, all that stuff adds up. And a lot of people, they're not prepared for it in the spring, and then they run short on money. And I know that because that's how we did for years. We lived like that. And every spring it's like, oh, we've got to fix this, and we've got to fix this, and the snow dented this, and the skid loader ran into this, and that has to get fixed. And it adds up really fast. So I want you to think about all that stuff when you're putting together your numbers. Okay.
And I have new ruts in my gravel driveway. Now I need to bring gravel in.
Yes, that happens all the time. Ruts. And so it's kind of an expensive thing that people don't think about, and it sucks. There's nothing good about it, but it's just part of having this kind of business. So you're going to have that kind of stuff. So if I could tell you, when you're thinking about spring cleaning, wherever you live, because we live in a state that has 4 seasons, so it's kind of hard on the land. If you live in an area, I'm from California, where the weather's hot more often, so you don't have such a change in the ground. If you're going to have constant changes in the ground, you're going to have a lot more stuff brought in a lot more often. And start thinking, start making a list. Take a pad of paper, start making a list of all these expenses, and I want you to keep track of it over an entire year. And then the next year, keep track of it again. And as you do, you'll start to even out on what your numbers are going to be and what it's going to cost, because they are expensive. And even things like what the horses break, have a fund for that stuff. put money away, and that comes out of the cost of the board. You know, even if you're taking $25 a month from each horse, and that $25 goes right into an emergency fund to repair stuff, that is something you need to think about. And we're getting one of our tractors fixed. Well, we've been trying to get it fixed for like a month, but David's still waiting for it to come in. And all he could tell me is it was going to be like between $800 and $1,200 to fix. So I know it's somewhere in there that it has to get fixed. And so you want to make sure that all your equipment, you have money put away for that. And if you're gonna board horses as a business, that money has to come from somewhere. So that's where you take your horses and you take out the number of horses you have and you divide it out. And if you're gonna, well, if you have 10 horses and you're taking out $20, that would be $200. So if you're boarding 20 horses, you know, that would be $400 a month. That kind of gives you an idea of, and you're gonna put that money away, and that's just for repairs. So I want you to, I guess I kind of want you to think about that stuff. When people are asking me about the cost to run a place like this and how to set it up, these are always the things that are overlooked, and I get it because we overlooked them too. We had no idea, and we had a brand new building, and I thought that brand new building was going to kind of last forever. And it's amazing how wore out it gets really fast, because horses and people are really hard on stuff, and things break all the time, and you're going to want to set yourself up and make sure you have money put away for all that. So it's just something really important to think about. Trish, I don't even know what time it is.
It is 7:11.
Okay, so if there's no other questions on that, okay, I'm going to talk about a couple other things that, since we're going into spring and summer, these were just kind of on the top of my head, because I know the one thing people are already starting to ask me is, when will we be putting horses on grass? And I know there's articles out there about putting horses on grass, pasture, and all that. And it kind of depends. Our horses are not on the grass at all until like June. And David likes to wait till the grass gets about a foot high, because otherwise it's going to be gone. And we're getting to that point now. So probably we're pretty dry right now. So the grass hasn't been growing as fast as it normally has been out there in the pastures. It grows in here in the yard. We have to mow it all the time, but not in the pasture. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is something that catches a lot of barn managers off guard. And what do you do with the horses that can't go on grass? And not every year, but there's been a lot of years where I've had horses where the owners, the horses couldn't go on grass because they had metabolic issues. They'd had previous laminitis. They didn't want them to go on grass. And what are you going to do with that? Do you have a place to put that horse if all the other horses are going to go on grass? So I want you to think about that if you're setting up your stable, because if you're gonna have pasture where horses are going out and you have someone that comes to your barn, or let's say they're on a tour and you tell them they go out on grass, they could ask you that, well, will you put a grazing muzzle on? You want to think about, are you going to charge to do that, or is that something you'll just do? Are the horses going to be able to eat the regular hay with a grazing muzzle on? We had a situation a couple years ago where we had two horses that had grazing muzzles on, and we would always feed hay in the morning, and the owner didn't want the horses to have the grazing muzzle on with the hay, but then when we opened our pastures, she wanted the horses to have the grazing muzzle on. And it was a little bit more work on my end, because I had to go out there and find the horse, put the grazing muzzle on. It worked, it was fine, but you're going to be asked these kind of requests. So it's something to think about with spring, because it happens, especially if you have a horse that's obese and it needs to lose weight, and you want to think about how you want to do that. If you're not going to do that, are you going to have private turnout for the horse? Are you going to be able to are you even set up for that? Think about your paddocks, think about where you're going to put horses, and it'll make your job a lot easier, because sometimes it gets kind of complicated with all the grass and horses with different issues and people that don't want their horse to gain too much weight. They're worried, and then you might have other people that can't wait for them to get on grass because they want them to gain weight. It kind of goes back and forth, and so just think of yourself and think of how you're going to set that up if you start asking questions like that. And anything on that? Okay. Anyways, I think for tonight, I think that's all we've got. If you have any questions, shoot on in. You know, it's kind of I think, kind of a quiet night, but that's okay. Quiet is good. We are going into summer, and start thinking about things in summertime that you have issues with. You know, during the seasons, every season there's different issues. It might be barn hours. It could be a special request that people have during the summer that you wouldn't have during the other times of year. So I'm going to pick a subject next Monday to talk about, and I'll let everybody know what it is. And we want to wish you a wonderful week, and we want you to be very successful in your horse business. And if you have any questions during the week, just go to probarnmanagement.com, ask whatever you have, and I'll try to answer you. And don't forget, I do consulting. If you want to talk to me privately, I'd be more than happy to talk to you. And I just want to wish you a wonderful week, and God bless you. And thank you.